From our last Krishna talk, we were discussing the what was that? We were discussing how Gadadhar Pandit approached Mahaprabhu saying that he felt that because he had given his mantra to an unqualified person that he'd lost the potency, the connection to the mantra, the potency was no longer there. So this leads us to another topic on our list. It's been on our list of topics for some time. And it concerns the Gayatri mantra. So if you're watching this video, then you've seen the title, and the title of the video has probably definitely got your attention. So yes, this is going to be quite a controversial topic. Well, it's not really controversial, except for those who are misled. All right, so let me give some background here. And I want to start with saying something about the Gaudiya Mutt. So anybody who's talked to me, read my articles, watched our videos or anything has certainly heard me speak favorably about the Gaudiya Mutt. Well, I have to clarify a few things. Let me just say, I've even received death threats from the Gaudiya Mutt people before because of not joining their bandwagon and agreeing with what I felt was, or what I could see was contradictory to the philosophy, Siddhanta, if you will, of Srila Prabhupada and of other members of the Gaudiya Mutt family, such as Srila Sridhar Maharaj or Srila Puri Maharaj. So I'm in no way an emissary for the Gaudiya Mutt in general. And it's a fact that during the time of Srila Prabhupada, there were disagreements amongst godbrothers. There were disagreements between our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and some of his godbrothers. And there were disagreements amongst other godbrothers also. In a similar way, there are disagreements today amongst the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. So, but it's wrong thinking to think that Srila Prabhupada had disagreements and grievances with all of his godbrothers. That's way far from the fact. It is also wrong thinking to think that no one in the Gaudiya Mutt was envious of Prabhupada or was critical of him. There certainly were, and there still are critical elements of Srila Prabhupada in the Gaudiya Mutt. So you can't just lump people in and say, brand Gaudiya Mutt as one way or the other. But when I speak of the Gaudiya Mutt, I think of the Gaudiya Mutt of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta.
Right.
It's like, how do we think of ISKCON today? Well, it depends on what era you're looking at, you see. And I think hands down, without exception, all of us, at least those who are loyal to our Guru, there have been those who have totally rejected Srila Prabhupada and even have websites to attest to the fact and went somewhere hither-thither, taking initiation from Bhakti Siddhanta's brother, or what have you. But I think we would all agree that the ISKCON of in the time of Srila Prabhupada, although not perfect on our part, the ideal and the conception, the purpose for which it was established was pretty much as near perfect as you can get in this world. And so when I speak of the Gaudiya Mutt, I'm speaking of the Gaudiya Mutt of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. When I speak up, when you hear me speak up in favor of the Gaudiya Mutt, it's the Gaudiya Mutt of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. not the Gaudiya Mutt of so many fractions, not the Gaudiya Mutt that was inimical or aggressive or resentful or what have you towards Srila Prabhupada. Mm-hmm. So definitely these things did exist in the past. And although Srila Prabhupada did, as in his own words, say the war is over, and he made amends with his godbrothers, well, unfortunately, the war continued, so-called the war continued. The criticisms continued on both sides, even after Srila Prabhupada. So that's history, and that's just a statement I wanted to make about that. So, but what we're going to discuss about today is there was a statement, how to get into this and so that we can discuss the whole thing. There was a statement made by a prominent sannyasi. Well, it's not even fair to say prominent sannyasi from the Gaudiya Mutt, because he was not a prominent sannyasi in the Gaudiya Mutt. He was not a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But he was a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And he became, in recent years, not so recent, but in the last decade and a half or 2 decades, he became prominent in the West. Mm. And so, I'm not mentioning names here, but this particular sannyasi became very prominent. And remember, this talk is related to Gayatri-mantra. This is the main focus about Gayatri-mantra. So during his prominence in the West and during his traveling and preaching, he came in contact with many disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And over the course of events, he came to find out that Srila Prabhupada, starting sometime around 1968-69, we're not quite sure, but he came to find out that Srila Prabhupada would give second initiation to his disciples who were going to receive Gayatri Mantra. He would sometimes do that for those disciples via a recording. And I think many of us still have those old tapes, or maybe they've been digitized now, but we have the tape recording. Those of you who are so young that don't even know there used to be tape recorders. Now they're digital recorders, but before that there were tape recorders. And there was a tape recording of Srila Prabhupada chanting the Gayatri mantras one word at a time. Mm-hmm. And if you were in a far distant place where his divine grace was not going to be going soon, or maybe at all, but you were going to be receiving second initiation, you would receive second initiation via a tape recording. I, for one, received Gayatri Mantra when I was in Denver via a tape recording. And I think there must be hundreds and hundreds of us. So when this Gaudiya Mutt sannyasi heard this, he said that actually Prabhupada, your Guru Maharaj, was cheating you. Whoever received this initiation via tape was being cheated by Swami Maharaj, by your Prabhupada, because you were not qualified, and therefore he was cheating you by giving the Gayatri mantras via a tape recording. So when I first heard this, I thought, oh, this has got to be the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard, But he was saying that the mantras must be received through, I forget what's the right ear or the left ear. I forget which it's.
Generally, it's the right ear.
The right ear. The mantra must be received through the right ear, and it must be spoken into the right ear by the guru. And certainly this was the tradition for thousands of years. But then Gaudiya Vaishnavism entered into the modern world. Mm-hmm. And since that time, there have been many technical innovations. I think probably beginning with the three were the printing press, the radio, and the telegraph, the telegram. Mm-hmm. And the Gaudiya Mutt used all three of these things to their fullest extent, I might say, or to their fullest capacity, especially the printing press, but then the radio also. The Magic Lantern Show. Remember that? That was the Magic Lantern Show was what we call today a slideshow, a projection of pictures from a slide projector onto a wall. Well, those slide projectors in way back in the beginning of the 20th century were called magic lanterns. Mm-hmm. And I don't know exactly what one looked like, but
it had a candle behind it.
Yes, it had had a kerosene lamp or something like that. It wasn't an electrical projection.
The slides were glass with paintings on them. Yeah.
Yes, they were the old 5x7 glass slides. It was called the Magic Lantern Show. And the Gaudiya Mutt used the Magic Lantern Show. And then things like the dioramas. But dioramas have been around for a long, long, long time. Mm-hmm. But the tape recordings, like once we asked Srila Puri Maharaj if there was ever a tape, a recording, a gramophone recording. And in those days they had the gramophone. So a devotee requested me, he said, "Oh, would you please ask Srila Puri Maharaj if there has ever been a gramophone or a recording of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta?" So that afternoon during the darshan, that devotee was also present there, but he was a little shy and wanted someone else to ask the question. And so I asked the question more or less on his behalf, and I immediately felt reduced to the size of, well, whatever you want to think insignificant is. That's what I felt. I felt like a fool, and I felt reduced to insignificance. So I asked Srila Puri Maharaj if there was any recording, a gramophone or any type of recording of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And at that time, he looked at me like, "Are you from another planet? Or are you even here? Or, are you in Krishna consciousness? Or are you just something that's blowing by in the wind?" I mean, and just from his look, I was reduced to feeling quite insignificant. And then he pulled his beads up out of his bead bag, and he held his beads in his hand. He looked at his beads for a moment, touched them to his head as he frequently did, put his beads back in his bag, and then he looked at me and he said, "Bubba, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta is always here with us now." And I felt even smaller at this point, you see. So, but apparently there never was a recording of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So anyway, back to the point of this. So this so-called rising star in the Gaudiya Mutt, he felt that this isn't possible, that one must hear the mantra as has been the mantra received by disciples. It must be chanted into the ear of the disciple by the guru, and that any kind of machinery cannot carry the potency of the mantra. And so, in hindsight, I look back at this and I go, well, yeah, these people, they didn't have much experience with the modern world, really. I mean, once I was riding in a car in Oregon with this sannyasi from the Gaudiya Mutt, and as we rode along, we were passing many fields, and there are many, many cows in these fields. And so he looks out the window and he said, "Oh, in your country there are so many cows, beautiful cows."
Just like Vrindavan.
Just like Vrindavan, yes. And then I said, "Well, Maharaj, the difference is all these cows are going to the slaughterhouse. So it looks beautiful now, but tomorrow it's the death of all those animals. So, you know, it was not only my experience with this particular sannyasi, but with other people from India in general, whether they were Brahmins or Goswamis or sannyasis, and when they would come to the Western world, they didn't really have a handle on what they were seeing. Right. You see. Just like in India, devotees go to India, Vrindavan, for example. Oh, and everybody's a devotee.
Everyone's a Prabhu.
Everyone's a Prabhu.
Rikshawala Prabhu.
Rikshawala Prabhu. Everyone's a Paramahansa, you know.
Right.
Everyone's a Paramahansa. But when you know more of the background of the who's who and the what's what, well, once I was in Mathura and I watched a whole trainload, literally a trainload. There must have been hundreds of thousands of prophylactics in boxes. Mm-hmm. Boxes filled the whole of the Mathura train station. There were hundreds and thousands of prophylactics. So everyone can engage in their happy illicit sex life and not bear the responsibility of children in the Holy Dham. There's a McDonald's in the Holy Dham. Just a couple miles south of Mathura on the Agra Highway, and it is still inside the Braja Mandal. So, you know, as Prabhupada said, Krishna is not in Loi Bazaar. So, you know, anywhere we go in the world, it takes some background to understand what actually we're seeing, who's who and what's what. So anyway, back to this point about the Gayatri. So I thought, well, yeah, the way of things, you know, the use of tape recorders and all this kind of stuff is a little bit maybe out of the comprehension of someone who's, you know, 70 or 80 years old and lived their whole life in India, where even a watch was some part of phantasmagoria at a point, you know. But what really surprised me is that this sannyasi said, your Guru Maharaj was cheating them because they weren't qualified. And I thought, well, this absolutely sounds ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I said, so this, and this person claimed to know Srila Prabhupada so closely. And I kind of realized, well, I don't think he knows Srila Prabhupada at all, what to speak of intimately, closely.
Right.
And I was, and many things, you know, flashed through the mind in a moment to remember. And I remember during my sannyasa initiation, or building up to my sannyasa initiation in 1976, there were many, I think there were over 30 other devotees in the initiation for Harinam and second initiation, and there were other sannyasis also. But I remember Tamal Krishna Maharaj had even a larger group of devotees. Now, someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe I remember this pretty accurately. I just don't remember the number of devotees. But there was a large number of devotees for second initiation. And, well, the long and the short of the story is, Prabhupada said, why so many? And some of those devotees, I think it was a number closer to 20 or so, were removed from the list. And the reason they were removed was, well, Prabhupada said, why so many? And he felt that they were not reading the books. So he didn't say they're unqualified, but in his estimation, reading, studying, and understanding the books is one of the important qualifications for second initiation. So I may be wrong in that, and I welcome to be corrected on that. But the point is that if you weren't qualified for something, well, Srila Prabhupada would not be afraid to tell you. You know, it wouldn't be he'd hammer you over the head and kick you in the face and push you into the gutter and condemn you that you're not qualified. But
what doesn't make any sense? When I hear that, what doesn't make sense to me is that Prabhupada, he's saying that Prabhupada cheated them because they weren't qualified. But then those same devotees that heard the Gayatri mantra on the cassette went on the altar to worship the deities afterwards. Would Prabhupada allow such a thing?
Yeah, so it makes no sense whatsoever. So, okay, but there's more to tell about this story. And I didn't know until this morning when we were talking on the phone that, and you look this up, and I'm gonna have you read this, because not only did someone from outside ISKCON begin to preach that in the West in the when would that have been? The 1990s, and just after this century began, at the beginning of the first decade of the 21st century. But a prominent Indian-bodied guru in ISKCON preached the same thing, and I had heard this, but this morning you found the reference in one of that Swami's books. So no need to mention the Swami by name, but you go ahead and you can mention the title of the book, and anybody who has the book can look it up. And he's saying, we'll read what he says.
Sure. So this book is called The Worship of Sri Guru. This section is in chapter 3. It's a questions and answers section in that chapter 3. So this prominent guru in ISKCON says, quote, "One has to hear. It is not that, all right, tapes are there, I hear the recorded tapes. Shabda Brahma will never descend. You should be greedy. Physical contact is required. You must hear directly, not just by listening to tapes. Shabda Brahma will never descend through a tape. One must hear from a physically present guru."
So this wasn't just one sannyasi from the Gaudiya Mutt saying that hearing the mantras from a tape is not bona fide. It was also a sannyasi in ISKCON, a guru in ISKCON, saying that receiving the mantras from a tape was not bona fide. So, let's look at this for a minute. You pointed this out that, and he's saying must be physically present. But actually, what he's saying is you cannot hear this from a record. This cannot go through a machine. Sapta Brahman cannot pass through a machine. What's funny is the chances are that during this darshan, the guru who was speaking through a microphone, which was then going through an amplifier, which was then going through a loudspeaker, which was then going into the ether.
Right.
See? Well, maybe not. But the point is, if that be true, then a lecture on Bhagavad Gita is Sapta Brahman. I know that there are hundreds of recordings of this guru that are listened to by his disciples today and by other people today. But by his own explanation here, Sapta Brahman cannot be transmitted by such method.
Right.
So he's saying that listening to my tapes that you're recording right now, which then they use to make this book, that this is bogus, that the Sapta Brahman is lost.
Right.
So where does this thinking come from? Well, it comes from the very orthodox section. It comes from the very, what they call in India, the backwards section. In India, they refer to certain social sections as being very backward, like in Rajasthan. Yeah. There's in the village, they do the sati.
Mm.
And so this is the backward section. So I have to say this comes from the backward section. So now there's an interesting story that goes on in the future. And not in the future, but it was in the time after Srila Prabhupada, and it was in the time that many, not so many, but a significant number of Western devotees had come to the lotus feet of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and they had taken shelter there. So that's a long story with a lot of misunderstandings in that story. But a situation arose where there were disciples from the West, from South America particularly, I believe they were from. And they had received, at some point, Harinam initiation. They had come to the mutt in Navadvip, and they'd received Harinam initiation. And then they were to receive sometime later second initiation, but they were not able to come to Navadvip. Mm. You know, there are many countries in the world where devotees just do not have the facility to come to India, but once in a lifetime for some people. It's not like from England or the wealthier countries like Germany. I have friends that go to India twice a year. And I also know people here in Mexico that have never been to India, and they've been devotees for 40 some years. So it's not just easy for everyone. So they said to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they said, well, we could record the Gayatri mantra. You can give the Gayatri mantra on a tape, and then we can send that tape to these devotees in South America. So when they said that, I'm summarizing the story, paraphrasing the story, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was taken back a little bit because this was something he had never heard of. It did not exist in his experience, you see. And then it might have, I forget which devotee it was anyway, don't need to mention anybody's names. But one devotee said, well, you know, in the time of our Guru Maharaj, in the time of our Prabhupada, the same situation arose, and he could not go everywhere in the world and give second initiation, Gayatri mantra, to his disciples. So a recording was made. And then from that recording, the disciple received second initiation. Then Sridhar Maharaj said, oh, Swami Maharaj has done, your Prabhupada, he has done, then I can also do. You see. And then, a decade after that, excuse me, the same situation arose with Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj, who had disciples here and there in the world, and he was, what to speak of, he was just always in India, either Vrindavan, Mayapur, or Puri. And the same thing was suggested to him, that he could make a recording, and the recording could be sent, and the devotees could receive second initiation. And he'd never heard of such a thing either. That was out of his purview, worldview. That was not in his experience. So he was taken back a step about that. And then the devotees said to Srila Puri Maharaj, well, Sridhar Maharaj, he has done, your godbrother Sridhar Maharaj, he has done like that. And Swami Maharaj, your godbrother, he has done like that. And Srila Puri Maharaj replied and said, oh, they have done? Then I can also do. So that was the parampara of the recorded Gayatri mantra. In other conversations, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we don't have the exact quote here for you, but he said, what is important is the goodwill of the Guru. When the goodwill is there, the goodwill, the blessings of it, when that is there, then it may come via a piece of paper, it may come via a recording, or it may come, he may directly give the mantra. But what is important in receiving that mantra is the goodwill. If the goodwill of the Guru is there, then the potency is there. The Sapta Brahman is there.
He used to say this word, heart connection.
The heart connection, yes.
Yeah.
Now, in some of the first times, or not times, in the first time, second time, that I went to Chaitanya Saraswat Mutt, in the time of Srila Prabhupada, some godbrothers were there, of my godbrothers, Prabhupada disciples, and they knew a little bit about the story of my sannyas, or I can't remember exactly, they might have asked me something, and they were fishing for something, you see. And so, in the story of my sannyas, two things happened. I didn't give Srila Prabhupada any dakshina on the day of sannyas, and I didn't hear the sannyas mantra from him. And the reason was that I arrived a little early, and being very enthusiastic, I had a large donation. It was large for the time. It was a $12,000 donation for His Divine Grace. That's about $150,000 now. And I gave that to His Divine Grace, and that basically that was all the money I had. I didn't have any money. We gave everything to His Divine Grace. So when the day of our initiations came, then in the afternoon, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he announced that, so the sannyasis who have dakshina to give to Srila Prabhupada, they can come to his room at a particular time, 4 o'clock or whatever it was. So I should have just went along anyway, but I was just, true to the word. I've already given my dakshina. I don't have any dakshina to give, so I didn't go to Srila Prabhupada's room. Well, when I heard that when the devotees went to his room, they also heard the sannyas Gayatri mantra from His Divine Grace. And there were 6 other sannyasis and then myself. So the 6 went. They gave some dakshina. They heard the mantra. So when this godbrother at Sridhar Maharaj's mutt understood my story, he goes, so you didn't actually hear the mantra from Srila Prabhupada. You only got it on a piece of paper. And I said, yeah, that's right. And he said, well, and he started on the same line that you didn't hear it from a tape and you didn't hear it from Prabhupada. So, you might have been a sannyasi already for 12 or 13 years, but you didn't hear the mantra from Prabhupada. So maybe you should hear the mantra from Sridhar Maharaj. And I didn't feel comfortable with that at all. I didn't feel comfortable with that. And so I resisted that prodding, you see. You should hear the mantra from Sridhar Maharaj. And I said, no, I don't think that's necessary. I don't get your drift, And so he and I were arguing, you see, this godbrother. So then Govinda Maharaj, the senior disciple of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, this is 1987. He came into the room, so this sannyasi says to me, he says, well, Govinda Maharaj is here, and he's senior to both of us. Why don't we take his opinion? And I said, well, okay, So he explained the whole thing that Narasingha Maharaj, actually that time I was just known as Jagat Guru Swami. He said, well, Jagat Guru Swami, he actually didn't hear the mantra from Prabhupada when he took sannyas, etc. And before he could suggest it, so I'm suggesting that maybe he should hear from Sridhar Maharaj. Govinda Maharaj said, yes, actually when Sridhar Maharaj took sannyas, he didn't hear the mantra from Bhakti Siddhanta either. So my godbrother was kind of floored at that point. He was like, what? He said, no, there was so much noise going on at the time of Sridhar Maharaj taking sannyas that Bhakti Siddhanta just passed the mantra to him on a piece of paper. So I said to my godbrother, I said, yes, parampara, paper sannyas. And so that kind of ended that. And Govinda Maharaj said what is important there is the goodwill of the guru. So however you want to understand the goodwill, the blessings, the
acceptance.
Mm-hmm. I mean, now some confusion may arrive with the Ritviks. How many Ritviks? I run into some kid, he's 23 years old. He tells me his guru is Prabhupada, and he's slinging a thread over his shoulder, and I think, okay, this kid got his name from a hat, and now he got Gayatri Mantra from a tape. Well, he'll listen to this thing and say, yes, Sabta Brahman is passed on through the tape. Yes, but the difference is you can't steal the tape. You cannot steal the blessings in that way. Becoming a disciple is a two-way street. It is not sufficient that you just think, I'm a disciple of, and pick your guru. Because if you can do that, well, then you can pick Bhaktisiddhanta, you can pick Bhaktivinoda, heck, you can pick Rupa Goswami. And if you argue, well, Prabhupada's books, somebody can go, hey, I'm Bengali. I read Sanskrit and Bengali. I'm going to be a disciple of Rupa Goswami, Jiva Goswami, or what have you, you see. So becoming a disciple is a two-way street. One, the aspiration to be a disciple comes from the perspective, the aspirant, and then the acceptance comes from the guru. The function of initiation is the acceptance. The guru accepting. It is not something that you can simply presuppose. Mm-hmm. Those of you who remember what's called the KYC, the Krishna Yoga community in the 1960s, there's a good number of devotees in ISKCON today and who were disciples or are disciples of Srila Prabhupada will remember that when this group, known as the KYC, the Krishna Yoga community, of which I was also a member, we had announced to Prabhupada disciples, we were requested, you have to accept a bona fide guru. We had a separate independent ashram. We had separate Sankirtan party going on the street every night, all kind of stuff. So we were told you have to accept the bona fide spiritual master. And we said, well, we do. Mm-hmm. And they said, well, you have to become disciples. And we said, well, yeah, we do. Prabhupada's our guru. So they were totally fried. And they wrote Srila Prabhupada. And they told him what we said. That we were saying we are Prabhupada's disciples. And Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter back and said, it's very nice that these boys and girls are chanting Hare Krishna, but they are not my disciples. So becoming a disciple is, if you will, a two-way street. You have to become accepted as much as you have to petition. You have to petition and you have to be accepted. So these Ritvik children, they're simply dreaming, you see. They're trying to follow, but they're simply dreaming. And the confusion for them comes that, we do have the tape of Srila Prabhupada, you see. We do have the tape of him chanting Gayatri, so we can hear that tape and we receive the Gayatri mantra. Well, the goodwill isn't there. Of course, they have their argument for that, whatever it's called, the last order or whatever. But anyway.
Basically, they're saying that Prabhupada doesn't have a say in it.
Yeah.
He's going to accept me whether he likes it or not.
Yeah. That's right. Here I am, take it or leave it, And in fact, just take it, There is no question that you can leave it. If we will remember back what to speak of, in the last months leading up to Srila Prabhupada's departure from this world, there were no initiations. Mm-hmm. There were no initiations. There were plenty of devotees in waiting. But there were no initiations. That's another subject.
Actually, one thing you're talking about, the goodwill of the Vaishnava. Something just came to my mind is that there was a conversation with one ISKCON guru and Srila Sridhar Maharaj very early, like 78 or 79. And the ISKCON guru was asking Srila Sridhar Maharaj about a bunch of villagers from Bihar came to see Srila Prabhupada in 1977. And they wanted to be disciples, but Prabhupada wasn't initiating. So when they came to his room, then Prabhupada accepted them as disciples, but there were no beads, no names given. But he said, I consider you to be my disciples. So when they got back to the village, the senior man of that village, who was accepted along with all of them, he gave them all names. Later he became an ISKCON guru, actually. But he gave them all names and beads and everything.
That was Bhakti Prabhav, wasn't it?
No, that was Radha Govinda Swami.
Oh, right.
Radha Govinda, yeah. So this ISKCON guru was asking Srila Sridhar Maharaj, so are they actually Prabhupada's disciples? And Srila Sridhar Maharaj said yes, because they have the goodwill of Swami Maharaj. He has accepted them, but they will need shiksha, he said.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but I just saw the goodwill of the Vaishnava.
Yeah. That's the all-important factor.
The formality wasn't there, but the heart connection was there between them and Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So we were looking at this, where Srila Prabhupada had said, and I believe it was 1967, that the only thing he has introduced into the Krishna consciousness movement was he, as a sannyasi, performing the marriage function for his disciples. But actually, even more significant than that is this recording of the Gayatri-mantras, and this then being the method by which the disciple will receive the mantras. This is also quite a revolutionary introduction, but it follows right in the same path as using the printing press, as using the radio, as using the magic lantern, as using the
telephone.
Yes, what was that you mentioned to me?
I think it's 33 or 34, 1934. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had a disciple who was in Dhaka, which is now Bangladesh. It was East Bengal at the time. And he couldn't make it. For some reason, he couldn't get to Dhaka. So he gave him Harinam initiation over the telephone. He spoke the Harinam, the Maha Mantra, over the telephone and accepted him as a disciple.
So the introduction of technology, actually, according to Manu Samhita or wherever, there are all types of restrictions for one to go abroad. One cannot do that. One cannot go where one of the 7 holy rivers doesn't flow. One cannot go where there is not a temple. When there's so many restrictions, you see. And yet, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta ordered his devotees to go beyond the flow of the 7 sacred rivers, you know.
Right.
And Srila Prabhupada went even farther, crossing the Atlantic to a, as he said on his arrival poem, this demoniac
place of Rajagun and Tamagun.
Yeah, just this place of ignorance and passion. How will they accept your message? And there are some Brahmins in India. They will not sit down unless it's on a deer skin. They will not. There are a certain class of Brahmins. They will not even touch metal. Their Achman cups, everything they have is wood. They will not even touch metal. There are sannyasis, they will not touch fire. They do not do fire yagyas. They do not cook. They will not cook their food. They have to have somebody do it for them, but they will not touch fire. They will not touch metal. They will not cross oceans. They will not sit down unless it's on a deer skin, etc., etc., etc. Well, all these things were fine and dandy thousands of years ago. But beginning with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, riding in the motor car, this was outrageous.
Coming to Vrindavan in a motor car.
Oh, my God. Yeah, so these things, now it's like it's traffic jams in Vrindavan. But there once was a time when just riding into Vrindavan in a motor car was considered an aparad by the Orthodox section.
What to say of that? Giving a thread to a non-Brahmin.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. That started in the time of Bhaktisiddhanta, giving Brahma Gayatri to those who are not born in the Brahmin family. Oh my gosh, what a transcendence of orthodoxy that was, you see.
Right.
So, but it's only because of these things that real Krishna consciousness has survived in the world.
Exactly.
So, it's also wrong to think that Krishna consciousness began in the world with our Guru Maharaj getting on the Jaladuta. That was a huge step. But there have been many battles fought before that. And really, those battles reached a crescendo in the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And he waged war on Maya, whether it was Orthodox Maya, Brahminical Maya, or Maya's Maya, modes of ignorance, passion, false pride, family heritage, all these things as being a pre-qualification to Krishna consciousness. And then his disciples have carried that on to the present day. Well, some of them have anyway, and their successors. And we sometimes forget that preaching means fighting, not love bombing. But it doesn't mean that you have to insult people with every word, and you have to present Krishna consciousness in such a harsh and unacceptable way. No. But it doesn't mean just love bombing and try to make everybody feel good and just beg acceptability. Actually, if we want to beg acceptability, we should beg acceptability from the higher quarter, not from the lower quarter. It doesn't matter whether the Christians and the Pope accept us, because the time will come when they will vanish. Oh, really? Yes, really. They're Advaita Dharma. They're not eternal. And whether it's another 100 or another 1,000 years, they will just fade into history. Just like the worship of Osiris, just like the worship of Hercules, and so many gods of the ancient world, which were worshipped for much longer periods of time than Christianity today. So, over geographical time, these so-called religions will simply vanish. There's no need to beg acceptability from any of them.
Right.
So, anyway, that's my opinion on that. I'm not into interfaith dialogue. I rather prefer touche.
On guard.
On guard, yeah.
I'm just revisiting this quote from this book, and just two little things just came to my mind.
What book?
So this book this gentleman wrote about this worship of Guru and the quote he gave. The first thing I was just thinking was, when you hear the voice of Srila Prabhupada speaking about Krishna or giving a mantra on a cassette or a recording, is that material or spiritual? It's either one or the other.
What are you saying?
This gentleman is saying that you can't hear Shabda Brahman from a cassette. So when you hear Prabhupada on a cassette, the voice of Srila Prabhupada speaking Harikatha, is that spiritual or material?
Well, I would first ask, well, listen, we're listening to you on a tape. And what we'll do for the time being is we'll just accept your opinion and consider that what you just said is not spiritual.
The other thing you said is physical proximity. I mean, what do you gauge by physical proximity? Does it mean that the spiritual potency becomes less at 10 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards? As you get further away, the potency disappears?
Well, according to some of the Orthodox, the Guru has to put his hand right physically on your head to transmit the knowledge. It's a very, very physical.
External thing.
Very external, very physical, you see. So, in the olden days when a guru gave the initiation, or it could still happen today, he can give a blessing and touch the disciple on the head. So here's an interesting thing. When the guru touches the disciple on the head, that's a blessing. But Srila Prabhupada told that in India, a lot of people touch your feet, and if you accept that, you're accepting a certain amount of, you're accepting them, and the them means their karma also. And so what you do is you touch them back on the head, and you give it back to them. So there's a difference when a sinful person just runs up and touches the feet of a guru or a swami or a sannyasi or something like that, and then that swami touches them on the head. That is very different than when the guru touches the disciple on the head.
Right.
It's a blessing to be touched on the head by the guru, but the guru also gives the karma back to the rascal who just runs up and thinks, I'm going to dump some of my sins on the Swami's shoe,
right?
And they run up and touch your touch your feet. So
Right.
in India, when people do that, we touch them back on the head. So intention is everything. Goodwill is everything, you see. And well, there's some other examples of this, but I think that was what was very charming, as I always remember, and Srila Puri Maharaj saying, "Oh, Sridhar Maharaj has done, and Swami Maharaj has done, then I can do." And Sridhar Maharaj saying, "Oh, Swami Maharaj done, then I can do."
Right.
But this was unheard of to them. And, I wasn't there, and I don't know how the first tape was recorded, who did it, how the conversation went with Srila Prabhupada. But that was certainly a tremendous innovation, I guess you would have to say,
Definitely.
that we would have to put onto the list. And it was disappointing to see not only somebody from the Gaudiya Mutt, but one of Srila Prabhupada's own disciples saying that that this is not a bona fide way to receive the mantram. Of course, those of us who do know this particular Swami who wrote that book that you were reading from was influenced by elements in Orissa significantly outside. Yeah. And I don't just mean by the name of the an institution, Siddhantically, philosophically, outside the line, excuse me, of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. In fact, it was coming from those who were very antagonistic against Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. So that's unfortunate. That was unfortunate to hear that. It was also unfortunate to see that Gaudiya Mutt sannyasi preach like that. But what was even more unfortunate was to see certain Prabhupada disciples accept that.
Yeah. Accept
that. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, must be. That Prabhupada cheated the disciples that he gave second initiation to. But what the real irony is, what you pointed out, is that then after cheating them, he allows them to go on the altar and worship the deities in L.A. or Berlin or London or wherever. I think there's practically somebody everywhere at that time, everywhere in the world, almost in every temple, there's somebody who received second initiation from the tape. From the tape. And thus, Cook also, don't forget Cook.
Yeah.
Because in those days, only those with second initiation were allowed to cook, to touch fire. The rest of us, well, whenever you were there, you rolled chapatis, you cleaned pots, you chopped sabji, but only those with second initiation, particularly in the earlier 1960s and 70s, late 60s and 70s, after there was enough Brahmins. Only those who had second initiation could touch fire in the kitchen. So he cheats them, and then he allows them to cook and worship the deity and do abhishek and do artik and all these things. So
and take sannyas.
Oh yeah, right. Oh, but then he cheats them there too. He cheated me because I only got the piece of paper. Sweet, yeah. Anyway, I just thought that has to be mentioned because, you're reading from a book that is for sale in ISKCON bookstores and ISKCON bookstore websites here, there, and around the world. Who knows? It could be even in several languages by now. So I think it's at least important, as I've said many times before, for our community to know some of the histories and know some of the things that have been presented, which are very much inaccurate. And why these people do that? Well, they have other influences other than the influences of pure devotion. If you wanted to say, because of envy, maybe some of these people have said the things they have said because of envy. But I rather think first it's just plain old lack of experience, lack of advancement in Krishna consciousness. And it's so ironic. I say ironic, but whatever the proper word, that some of these preachers who have said some of these most ridiculous things are also heralded as being great Paramahansas, great Rasikacharyas, the topmost devotees on the planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really a zoo out there. Yeah. All right, so we wanted to make that one point clear. Now we have such things as someone can give initiation to somebody on the other side of the planet going through a satellite on Skype.
Yep.
I think just a couple months ago, one of our devotees in India, I was here in Mexico, and he received second initiation. We used Skype and a headset.
And you weren't cheating him?
No. I was trying my best to pass on what Srila Prabhupada had given to me.
Right.
All right. So thank you very much, Giri, for your research on that. And pay attention, folks. There's attention to detail is important. All right. Hare Krishna. Until next time.